So I just have had several people, actually many people, ask questions regarding this, and I know we've had this conversation between county council, the question of who votes for this tax, and so for the sake of I think transparency, I just wanted to ask county council, maybe is the one I'm speaking to could you confirm that so this tax in Sacramento City, it would be Sacramento City that would vote for their tax, but in the event that we put this on the ballot for the unincorporated, it would only impact the unincorporated, but the entire county, including all the other cities, would be voting on it. So since the unincorporated area is approximately a third of our population, 2/3 of the population would participate in the decision around what goes, what we decide, or what that ballot measure decides for the unincorporated. Am I correct in my analysis of that?
I won't speak to the analysis itself, but the answer to your question of who votes on it, I will speak to, and that is the electorate of the county of Sacramento, which is considered all voters who reside in Sacramento County, whether unincorporated or whether they reside in a city or not.
But it would only be for the unincorporated. It's only for businesses in the unincorporated.
If the board later chooses to develop a plan, as Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Cerna have pointed out, if the board does decide to develop a plan to allow cannabis in unincorporated Sacramento County, businesses that start in Sacramento County and operate in Sacramento County would be taxed.
And so is there a way that we could have more of a public process with the unincorporated county before putting something like this on the ballot? Is there anything preventing us from doing that?
Not sure what you mean by public process.
Have a conversation with the unincorporated county, let them, so they're aware that this is happening and they can weigh in with public comment regarding whether or not they want retail or, how they want cannabis in their unincorporated
Right,
county.
so that could happen if the tax measure passes and the board decides to develop a plan to implement commercial cannabis in Sacramento County. That would happen at that time.
So there's no way we could have it before? Are you saying we cannot have it the other way around? We can't go to the people first?
That's what the vote is.
Right. Well, so as we've said, there's two separate things. There's the tax measure that's being considered today, and then everybody in the county would be able to vote on it in November. That has to happen. If it's going to happen in this November's election, we have to do the introduction today and the approval at the next board meeting. So that is for the tax measure. As far as the practical implementation of allowing commercial cannabis in Sacramento County, that would be after the vote, and then public participation could happen at that time.
So we couldn't do the public. We could do the public process. You're just saying in order to get it on the ballot for November, it has to happen. We have to put it on, and there's not time for a public process.
For the tax measure, yes.
Could I respond to that?
Thank
please?
You.
Sure. Because I am in the queue. I would just say that this is now the third hearing we've had. We've had the initial fiscal conversation with the assistance of our consultant, which is behind you there. We had law enforcement come and give their perspective, and today we've heard the health benefits associated with cannabis. So I would argue that there's been a fairly robust public opportunity or an opportunity to hear from the public about this on three different occasions over the last several months. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that this is rushed or we don't have time to hear from the public. We have given, I think, ample opportunity and quite frankly been fairly welcoming to get different perspectives on the prospect of simply putting this on the ballot.
Before we go to Mr. Desmond, I just wanted to maybe just further clarify, any tax measure is not a required precursor to an ordinance or a policy directive by any jurisdiction, whether it's a municipality or a county, to determine under state law whether they want to license and or regulate commercial cannabis activities of any sort. It's certainly, that's what's before us here today, is to put that I guess it's not concurrent, but a measure before the voters that would ask that question relative to taxing should this jurisdiction wish to, the county, proceed. But whether or not this measure goes on the ballot, whether or not it's even supported or not, is not a requirement for this board now or in the future to consider licensing and regulating commercial cannabis. It may be desirable from a standpoint of revenue for all the reasons that have been stated previously, certainly by Supervisor Cernan and in the staff report. But to Supervisor Frost's request, you don't have to put a tax measure on the ballot before you can decide what you want to do. That's how we've thus far proceeded, and certainly very methodically, to Supervisor Cernan's point. But is that accurate, Lisa?
Yes, that's true. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so you always retain the authority whether or not you decide to tax it or not.
And that's a simple majority vote of this board.
Correct? That's
Because
correct.
that's a policy discussion, not a ballot, placing a ballot on the ballot
Right.
discussion.
Right.
Correct.
That's correct. That's correct.
But as the board knows, the
Yeah.
reason why staff is presenting it this way is because that's the way that
Yeah.
the board has requested it to
No,
happen.
exactly. That's what I just said.
But again, I know Mr. Desmond's in the queue, but to Mr. Natoli's point, if a majority of this board, just 3 of 5 of us, felt compelled that there is some benefit to opening up unincorporated Sacramento County to the prospect of various activities around cannabis cultivation, production, manufacture, and retail, we could do that by a simple majority vote, just the 3 of us. Of course, it would not necessarily pass muster with a 2/3 or 4/5 vote of the board for taxation at that point. But if it was the will of a simple majority of this board, we could make that decision, could we not?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Supervisor Desmond, then I want to come back up.
To continue belaboring, or I guess putting a fine point on this, but we couldn't tax it though, correct? Without this.
Correct.
Right. So